bizleri izleyen, dinleyen değerli katılımcılar.
Dear participants who watch and listen to us in front of their screens, welcome to the second day of Aegean Economic Forum's fourth session. Thanks to the help of Aegean Economy Development Foundation and Özgencil Group Corporation, Izmir Metropolitan Municipality, and under the partnership of Izmir Chamber of Commerce, Aegean Exporters Associations, İzdoğa, and also with the support of Izmir Industrialists and Businessmen Association, Izmir Commodity Exchange, Aegean Industrialists and Businessmen Association. This session will be held under the sponsorship of the Union of Chambers of Tradesmen and Craftsmen of İzmir, and Tümantaş Group, Aegean Region Chamber of Industry, Aegean Young Businessmen Association, Aegean Free Zone Founder and Operator Incorporation, and Vilo Turkey will be sponsoring this session, and with the support of Zorlu Holding, Dünya Newspaper, Bersay Communication, and Dünya Newspaper. I'd like to welcome you all to the second day of our Economic Forum. We are having fourth session of the Aegean Economic Forum. By the way, I'd like to remind you of one thing. There's going to be simultaneous translation, so if you wish to listen in English and Turkish, you can switch in YouTube channels. As you all know, this is the week of the Aegean Forum, Aegean Economic Forum, and our strategic partner is Izmir Chamber of Commerce. Before moving on to today's final session, I'd like to share tomorrow's program. We'll be with you again at the same time tomorrow at 10 a.m. in the morning. We'll be talking about 12,000 years with the sponsorship of Izmir Commodity Exchange and how to feed the world transformed by agriculture. And Christoph Felsi will also show you how to adapt to a different future, and for this, how people should change their behavior and thinking. Our guest speaker of the session, food and agriculture futurist and strategist Mr. Peltier, will be talking about that, and at 3 p.m. tomorrow again, we'll be discussing certain topics under the title of From Neolithic Age to New Generation of Agricultural Systems. For the program details of the conference, which will last for 5 days, Aegean Economic Forum, please do not forget to follow our social media links, and you can also have the live link at www.economicforum.org, and you can always access the links and the program. Dear participants and dear guests, the last session of today, our strategic partner of the forum is Izmir Chamber of Commerce, Business Model Changing Direction with Digitalization session. In order to open the session, I'd like to invite Emre Kızıl Güneşler, the head of Vice Chairman of the Board of Directors, Izmir Chamber of Commerce. The floor is yours. I'll leave the floor to him. The floor is yours. Esteemed moderator Ruhi Sanyar and esteemed Acar, esteemed Erdoğan, and Yelken Biçer, Delic, and Ursu, and esteemed guests, esteemed speakers, I'd like to welcome you all on my institution and my behalf. It's very meaningful, it's very important for us to be hosting this session because as a chamber we have raised awareness with respect to digitalization, because we know that when it comes to digitalization, hybrid and innovation have been affected immensely, and this pandemic process have accelerated these effects over our procedures. For that reason, we will be investing on these topics. Innovation and also digitalization are at the core of our project. So very briefly, I'll be talking about what we have done so far with respect to digitalization. We have come together as Izmir industrial actors, and we have done our best to make Izmir as a hub for industry, and ISQ and Innovation Center projects have been realized. We have ISQ Innovation Center, and from very beginning, we have already provided our support to entrepreneurs, and we have also supported startups with certain projects that are focusing on product development, and we have also made them come together with mentors on the national and international arenas. In the ISQ Innovation Center, we are also inviting companies having higher level of innovations so that a higher quality is directed to Izmir, and at the very end, Izmir will be having much more investments full of innovations. And also we want to bring more technologies and innovation at the same time in Izmir. And also our members could have the chance to meet with technologies that are applicable for their systems. And also, we work with the Ministry of Trade. Model Factory project, which is supported by our ministry, is something that we are co-founding as well. So SMEs and also entrepreneurs on the manufacturing sector could take part in this project so that their lean production capabilities could be enhanced. As you all know, rather than traditional methods on the innovation, there comes digitalization. For that reason, digitalization transformation could only be possible through entrepreneurs, especially new generation entrepreneurs who are providing better technological solutions should be definitely evaluated because they have better potential. And with our SQ portal, we try to reveal this potential. And this portal could be, by the way, seen to entrepreneurs. They could follow the developments on this portal. And we have this mentality focusing on solutions and solution-oriented mindset. So we have seen that certain traditional solutions have been left, and right now people are chasing after more innovative solutions. And another important thing is that on the floor, on the basement floor of our ESQ center, we have established a digital experience center specific to children. And actually, it could be very nice place to visit for every age, every people at every age. But our main purpose is to bring children and youngsters to this portal so that they can experience different solutions with respect to digitalization. And the target audience of ESQ is children, youngsters, schools, students, pupils, and especially the ones who are vulnerable and disadvantages in terms of socioeconomic levels and who have brightest ideas but having difficulties in accessing to education. Metropoles and nature, science, and trade are four main stations. So in four main stations, our visitors can have great experiences. Our center could provide multimedia digitalization experiences as well, and we can also have some authentic documents and oral history works. So new generation smart devices like robots and also artificial intelligence, any kind of pioneering behaviors could be experienced in our center. So I believe it's going to create a bridge from past to future for every generation that are visiting this center. And with technology, we believe that new generation can have a better perspective and they can build the future that they are dreaming of. And at the very end of my presentation, dear guests, I'd like to emphasize once again that we need digital technologies for a greener future. According to the forecasts of company, in the upcoming decade, in the world, there's going to be more than 150 billion sensors, and this is 2 times higher than the world population. IoT devices will be measuring the water and energy in the urban places so that we can have a chance to live in better places. Smart cities, smart food, smart water, every kind of digital attempt that can enable us live in a better world will, of course, leave a better place for next generations. Our biggest task is to provide a better place for the next generations, and we have to, of course, shape our lives with this respect. And we also say that for a greener future now. And I'd like to thank everyone who has exerted their contributions for the organization of this event. I'd like to thank you, and I'll give the floor to our moderator. Thank you very much.
Değerli konuklar, değerli panelistler, Aegean Economic Forum'un dijitalleşme ile yön değiştiren iş modelleri adlı oturumuna hoş geldiniz.
Now, I would like to welcome you all to this new session about business models changing by digitalization. And I would like to introduce you the presenters. Ajan Acar, board member of Turkish Telecom and chairman, as we know him, and from Istanbul. Leyla Delic, she is the chief information and digital officer of Coca-Cola. Of course, we need to find the Turkish of this as well. It's a very long definition. And before this, her duty, she used to work in General Electric Healthcare. So in this panel, I'm sure that we are going to learn a lot from her. And Mr. Nisturan Erdoğan from he is the CEO of the Vessel Group of companies. Well, no need to mention him. We know him very well. In the English market, for instance, as a group market, Vessel is a very important company. And another panelist is Adriana Ursu from the SAP company and expert of EMEA of South, and she is a sustainability business developer. And SAP is a very important company within this context, and we are going to learn from her on how they are approaching to this matter. Mr. Alp Avni Yaykanbıçı is attending us from New York, and I have to say that it is a great, actually, there is 8 hours of a difference with New York and Turkey, and he woke up at 6 o'clock in the morning, and he is the chairman of the Aegean Young Businessmen Association, and he is also representative of a very important body. So while we are designing this panel together with the organizers, we decided that it should be made in 2 tours. Of course, your time is very valuable and you have to return to your works and start earning more money for your companies. And I do not want to take much of your time. And I would like to give the floor to Mr. Ajlan Acar, but I would like to ask him a question first and foremost. Mr. Ajlan, I hope you hear me. Yes, I do. I do hear you clearly. So, when we talk about digitalization in the last period of time, particularly in the last 10, 15 years, has become quite prominent, but during the pandemic, digitalization was quite prominent as well in remote working, but in Turkey it has actually 10 to 15 years of a past. And yes, during the digitalization process, there are companies who have taken very important steps and they see that their productivity is increasing. They're creating more added value and they can analyze their client prospects better and they can actually localize them in a better way. And so this is a very important concept which needs a serious infrastructure. And what is the system and process design within this context? How does it change the structure? Because companies that they say they are digitalization or factors saying that people are going away and robots are coming. No, this is not the case. That's not what we have seen. But what is it? Can you please explain it a little bit to us? Of course, thank you very much for giving me the opportunity. I would like to welcome each and every one of you as panelists. I would like to start with a memoir. In the mid-1980s, from the central bank and international, we were going to manage the money traffic, and the system was incredible. And the former president, Turgut Özal, was also visiting it, and we were trying to explain what we were doing, how we were making the transformation. And he said that if I didn't have this, it didn't found this telecommunication infrastructure, then you couldn't have done it. And exactly like that, it wouldn't be easy. In the 90s, for instance, communication and information system technologies and electronic infrastructure is actually the basis of globalization as well. And today, what we are constantly taking in the agenda is the changing business processes done through digitalization. Well, if you take a look to the process, the infrastructure has been created. Yes, what has been done depends on the sectoral businesses, of course. It can change. But as you know, during the COVID-19 and the pandemic process has actually it speeded up the process, I can say. 10 years ago, when I was a president of the executive board of Doğuş Automotive, I have initiated the digital transformation in the company, and the chief digital information officer position was assigned at that period of time. In particular, in order to make investment of technology, we have initiated the Doğuş Group Technological Department. So this was the most important thing to do. You need to have an infrastructure, technological infrastructure, but that isn't sufficient. Of course, the culture of the company and also the human resources are very much important. That means to say that your staff has to also adapt themselves into this change, into this digital transformation. And in order to do this, you need to have a certain amount of time to create it. It's not easy to change those, the habits, of course. And it is said that the culture strategy can be eaten for breakfast. And that is the reason why it is not very easy to start up an application without transforming yourself into a digital process. And that culture needs to change indeed. So if there are those who didn't transform themselves, need to apply it immediately. Apart from technology, of course, you need to invest for the human resources who can make the transformation. And with the digital system, we need to convert the company into the digital systems. Maybe in the second tour, we can talk about these matter in a more prominent way. And I'm going to be tackling about 8 to 10 sectors, perhaps, and which sectors have been affected by digitalization can be evaluated by all of us, and we can do this in the second round, I suppose. Thank you very much for handing me over. And Ms. Leyla.
Siz yurt dışında da çok önemli bir kurumda.
Ms. Leyla, you are working in a very important company and abroad. You were head of it, and in Turkey we're trying to catch all these developments, and I'm sure that we're going to catch these developments with very important experts as you are. So everybody who says that they want to digitalize, or the companies that think they are digitalized, do you think they get successful? And of course, the companies do have to have some certain features in order to succeed throughout this digitalization. Which companies could achieve it, and those who couldn't achieve it, why couldn't they do it? So what would you like to say about it? Well, definitely, absolutely, and thank you very much. And I would like to continue where Mr. Ajan has finished, but before he was talking about the way of looking to the matter, and also your culture, changing your culture is very much important. So we can actually simplify it as those who can change a culture and those who cannot. So, of course, what we all discuss and all the transformations that have been done before, and taking a look to the previous industrial revolutions, there are still geographies that haven't changed yet. And I was living in I was visiting a very small city in a very rural geography. There was once a Coca-Cola there, but people were actually washing their clothes even by the riverside. So in this era, definitely necessitates new technologies, and that can only be done with some certain investments and infrastructure. So advanced technologies can only be done with these infrastructure. But let's say that in that rural area, there was no washing machine, but they have Coca-Cola there. So the way companies have to start this voyage, this journey, and have to stay in this journey constantly, because we are stopping to talk about digitalization slowly by slow. There are new flows. We are going to be talking about new trends in the future, and that's the reason why the companies have to adapt themselves constantly, and that change has to be continuous. And there are three things they need. One is very much important. They have to have a vision. Why are they doing it? For what? What contribution it is going to make? And what will it bring up? And on the other hand, we need to have leaders as well, having such visions that can put those visions into reality, and that is going to be also part of the culture. And the other one, competency and abilities. So the most important thing that we're talking right now in the globe is that there are not sufficient competent people. Yes, of course, in many technology, this is the case. For instance, we need 200,000 people that we need, but we can only fill a pool of 50,000 people. So there's a big gap. And of course, there are some certain companies that were lagging behind. And if they're also involved in it, of course, the amount will rise and more. People are, we're constantly talking about culture, but let us talk a little bit about culture later on. Thirdly, you are in mute, Mr. Ruhi. We cannot hear you. I was saying that this culture. So does this culture eat strategy for breakfast? Yes, absolutely. And yes, we are living this every day. When we talk about culture, just let me tell you what I mean here. We are talking about innovation constantly. Within the culture, there are a few things that have to be added up. We need to be open to feedbacks. This is productive failure. So we need to be habitual to fail and then to stand up again. And we need to experiment as well. This is also part of innovation as well. Diversity, inclusion, that is really very much important in a culture. So some certain elements, as I told you before, are very much important. And we need to talk about agile as well. So we need to adapt to those new way of doing business, and open-minded people and transformative cultures are very much important. Thirdly, the client. We are always talking about focusing to the client. I couldn't find the Turkish of this. Passionately paranoid about customers is what we always say, and data. And we always have to be focusing on these two issues. Of course, we have to put the client into the focus and also the data. So while doing all of this together, what is our aim? That has to be determined precisely. And if you want to make an optimization in-house to have a digitalization in-house, or if you do you want to create new business models and possibilities by using technology and digitalization. So if I talk about CCI, so we have started up with two of this. The client was in our focus. We were talking about the customer experience. Of course, we have a physical experience with our customers, but we also right now have a digital relation with our customers as well. There are factories where people are. Yes, of course, that will happen, and there will be in the future as well. Hybrid is always good, and that is the reason why in customer experience we are trying to get close and connect to our customers through any channel. But whatever channel is that, it has to improve, which brings up also innovative business models. And when we talk about business models here, without changing the model of working in-house, you cannot do it. You have to take a look in the company, and you have to prepare it for a new start, perhaps.
Bu dükkanı
So
toparlamak ne demek? Yani
how can we
çalışanları
actually
veya
clean up
yapıyoruz.
your house? So how to do it? Are we going to do an IQ test? No, we are just easing people's life by giving innovation. Any business that doesn't create a value is automatized. So we want our staff to focus themselves on a better way of doing business. And we have also an artificial replica of anything, of any business. So we can also create scenarios here. We are using artificial intelligence to understand whether something is going to fail, or to see whether something is going to fail or not. And we have to produce the product at the time, on the right spot, at the right time. And of course, we need to use our raw material precisely, and we need to use our capital in the best way. So these all together can actually develop the customer experience. So in that case, we are working here as CCI. We have done a lot of things, but while doing it, in particular, what I always emphasize here, we have a people roadmap. So our friends who are in the journey should adapt themselves as well to these changes. And that's the reason why we initiated some certain programs that they can actually be trained in these new ongoing issues, particularly in supply chains. There are new technologies that they need to learn. So we started up certain programs. A technician and an engineer in the supply chain have to also learn the industrial IoTs as well. So they all are going to be part of that journey. And in human resources issue, where I'm going to talk about it at the second round, but your strategy relations, the things that you have said so far, and all the cultures that you were talking about,
Niye doğudan değil de batıdan doğdu?
Why did this digitalization begin from the West and not from the East? Now I understand it. That was a great analogy. But I generally say in United States is somewhere, Europe is coming 5 years behind, Asia, apart from certain countries, they are 10 years coming behind. Of course, this is all about innovation and regulations. And indeed, there is also the issue of feedback. Yes, definitely for culture, this feedback is very, very much important. And there is a very ambitious environment as well. So if you do not change, then you are lagging behind. And for the time being, the war that we give is to actually attract competent people in their companies. They try to actually fight and actually finding competent people. So we need to start as companies. Those who couldn't start in digitalization as companies, they have to start immediately, because we're not going to be talking about digitalization any longer, because we're going to start talking about some other aspects and trends. And hence the case, those who didn't start this journey has to speed up.
Turan Bey, ben Vestel'le ilgili bir
Yes, Mr. Turan, I'd like to ask a question about Vestel. So you come from a company that was maybe at the center of digitalization. You are a manager. And when I am in your factory, I can see sensors everywhere, because those sensors warn the employees, and when something goes wrong, those sensors warn the employees. So how did you settle the infrastructure of the digitalization? What kind of problems you encountered with when you were working on digitalization? What was the result? What can you say? Because since the very beginning of their times, employees were just, nailing or putting the screws in the way that they knew. But how come you make them understand the sensors? And how did you say, like, this sensor is giving you warning when there is this beep or this red light? It gives you this warning. Was it really convincing, or else wasn't it convincing at all? Did they say, we already were producing television, we can do this like we knew? How was the reaction of the employees? What can you say? Hello, everyone. As Vestal, as you mentioned, we were born to this digitalization. Actually, digitalization took place in the electronic devices, technologically speaking, and the number of the digitals, we were just counting everything. Certain things were analog, certain things were digital. We were just counting the devices like analog and technology, the digital, but everything right now we do is digital right now. Analogs are just maybe certain things that we remember as our memories. So, but on the digital, of course, it must be turned into like a lifestyle. Those technological all ones should be turned into a digital lifestyle. And this is something that I want to say, Ruhi Bey. As Turkey, I think we are at a very lucky position. In many management books, there is this resistance to change phenomenon. So this is a very huge phenomenon, especially in the US and in Europe. But Turkey, maybe, I think we have a young population. It could be related to that, or else it could be related to our cultural genes. Maybe we are not as resistant as Europeans or Americans towards change. Is there any sociological or cultural reasons for it? There could be, because culturally speaking, culture has been altered that much. That's why I'm speaking about it as well. I mean, in the vaccination, we are a bit lucky, I think. As Turks, for the last 40 years, by the way, I've been in this sector. When we, for instance, visit China, we can also share their cultures. We can, eat our meals as they eat. And when we go to Sweden, we can also communicate with them in the way that they communicate among themselves. But these two different cultures, for instance, they can't manage working together maybe. We had many projects with Europeans and Chinese people, and I can see that Turkish people are having cultural advantages in terms of globalization. We are much more flexible, and I think this is a big advantage on the globalization. For that reason, you might hear it a lot when Turkish managers go to European or other countries. They are not suffering a lot. Leila, maybe we can ask this question to you. Had you some challenges? No. I didn't have any challenges at all. No. We are very much used to every kind of condition, actually. Yes, that is correct. For that reason, on digitalization, we have to make it everything on our lifestyles. And the target was like Industry 4.0. And if you just adjust it to our topic, it's about smart factories. And it is beyond smart factories. It's at the very moment of orders. So when order is sent, it is directly on the production phase, and then it's sent to you to delivery and post-delivery services. So traceability is still available. So from the very beginning till the end, everything is addressed, everything is mapped. And previously it was mentioned as well, this metal color people, like, or robots, I think, whether they will get our job from our hands or not. We have 8 factories in Vesta, just in Manisa organized industrial zone. Approximately 20,000 employees are available, and we have 2,000 robots. But those robots in the last 5 years have increased in number very much, but those robots are not like doing robotic works, but they should also be integrated to all the system. There's OGBs, automatic guided systems, and they should also be wireless. They should be communicating with them on a wireless basis. So these are main factors of Industry 4.0, but we have to say this as well. If we were 16,000 people back then, right now the number of the employees increased up to 19,000, 20,000, and we have 2,000 more robots. And the expectation of the humans are increased, by the way, and also the workflow of the people increased. Robots have the capacity to do the jobs on a repetitive basis without any mistakes. And I can tell you that in the past, in this kind of implementations, what we were doing, when we bought a system, softwares of those systems were bought together. SAP friends will know it a lot, and we also use SAP. And as of this moment, I can tell you this with satisfaction. Our young engineers at the ages of 20s, believe me that they just buy the hardware, and a part of it is produced in Turkey, and all the relevant softwares that are settling the infrastructure of Industry 4.0, starting from logistics to smart devices and also learning devices. Everything that I've mentioned, I'm really glad to say that, are developed and written by our software developers and engineers, and the cost is immensely reduced. We have 1,500 R&D employees, and almost 1,200 of them are engineers. And we can see this very clearly. Potential of Turkey is huge, and I can see it very well. In Manisa Organized Industrial Zone, you can't find a place, by the way. And in blue color, in white color, Leila has also mentioned, in order to attract that talent, there is a huge competition, and we need to attract those talents to our institutions, and they should be in our institutions for a long time. And we have a video, just 2 minutes video, maybe if it's okay for you, in the upcoming minutes, you can also watch our video. What do we mean by this dark factory, smart factory? We will have a video of 2 minutes. Maybe our spectators can also enjoy it and they can understand it. And at the end of the first round, I can tell you that I'm really happy to be in Izmir, because Izmir hinterland is actually transforming into a technology hub. This is how I observe this region. In the upcoming years, maximum 10 years, Izmir is going to be one of the digital centers, and this is what I believe wholeheartedly. Okay, before we pass to the second round, I have actually asked another question, but it's kind of missing. Okay, there's digitalization, there's 2,000 robots. They're not wandering around, of course, and it does not take the reaction of other employees. So if they were on the restaurant eating their lunch with other employees, of course, robots would be reacted by the employees. But if you hadn't switched into digitalization, what kind of a difference would there be? So Ahmet Nazif Zorlu, if I know him, he would be calculating the consequences. He would be either saying this kind of savings were reached or this kind of losses happened. So what can you say? And in the past, in the industry 3.0, in the automation, these devices were a bit more expensive. I tried to touch upon it partially. And right now, hardwares are less expensive, and in the past we were paying softwares, but right now we can develop software, so we buy everything as a hardware. So believe me that so this is the biggest maybe fastest amortization, and maybe I'm too assertive, but less than a year we have certain investments that are showing their amortization, and like the return of investment can be received just less than a year. Let's say one robot is $40,000, but right now figures are very, very cheaper than that as of this moment. So operating them and also developing the softwares of them and following them, repairing them can be managed by our friends at the ages of 20s, and they are very glad doing these jobs. This is a very feasible investment. Okay, I get it. Okay, for Adriana, I think this is not a good news, maybe, because it might lead to some reduction in your revenues, but we know that SAP is a very important company.
We know SAP is an important
and
company,
he has
so
switched into English. He's talking in English.
you can create new things to sell to the companies. I would like to address your question about this climate change emergency. As you know, we are facing a climate change emergency, and we know this especially as a olive grower. I recognize this from firsthand because when we go to the olive trees, for example, last year the harvest time was at the end of September. This year it's the end of October. I don't know what will be the harvest time next year. And we have a very important, at least we believe that it's an important meeting in Glasgow towards a more sustainable future. How can digital technologies, software solutions, artificial intelligence, big data, blockchain, etc., help companies or even countries on their journey to net zero? What do you think about this?
Thank you very much, Rui, and I appreciate very much the example that you gave about the olive oil. This is something that we see every day, but we also can look just outside sometimes and see the weather. You know, we talk about the climate change all the time, but what we get is weather, yeah? So sometimes people don't really understand what's the impact that climate change has just by looking at the weather. But if you look back 20, 30 years ago, like what was the olive oil and when were the plants ready, you can see that there are changes that are happening.
Sure.
But let's see what net zero means, first of all, because there are lots of commitments these days from many companies, and all of us and all our companies and all our governments should aim at going net zero. This means reducing the greenhouse gas emissions to zero, or to ensure that any ongoing emissions are balanced by removals or offsets. Second, when we say net zero, we also need to make sure that we include all types of CO2 emissions from our own operations, what is called scope 1, but also indirect emissions coming from the energy we use in our companies, in our countries, also called scope 2, but also those ones that come from the value chain, from our supply chain to all our business partners. These are called scope 3 emissions. And typically, these emissions are the ones which can reach up to 80% of the total emission of a company. So this should be absolutely included in a net zero commitment and strategy. And these days at COP26, we hear more and more about these commitments to get net zero. But let's see, coming to your question, how can digital technologies help with this? Of course, all the speakers before me have talked a lot about how can digital technologies help, to industrialize, to automate, to make things better, more efficient. How can we help also with the sustainability journey to reduce the emissions? Of course, first of all, you cannot improve what you cannot measure. So therefore, first, you need to start measuring the emissions. Therefore, we need technologies for calculating the carbon footprint for all scope 1, scope 2, and scope 3 emissions, as mentioned before. This means that you need to gather lots of data, and here we have big data, of course, from different data sources. It can be different systems that companies have in-house. It can be sensors, so IoT. It can be even manual input sometimes, but we need to get all that data. On top of that, we need to apply different calculation methods, depending on the data that we have, depending on the emissions factor that we have, and the accuracy level. Of course, we then need to aggregate all these data at different levels and present KPIs on different reporting standards. Lots of investors are asking for different sustainability KPIs. It's not anymore only about financial KPIs, but also about the non-financial one. So we need to have those KPIs also for our investors, not only for our stakeholders. Second of all, after measuring, we need to understand how we can reduce those emissions step by step. And for this, we need to steer the business. We need to make business decisions and implement strategies on how to reduce those emissions. For doing that, of course, technologies can help us to do what-if analysis, to use big data in order to get all the needed information that we have, apply machine learning on it, get better every time, and get the right strategy on how to reduce the emissions. And these decisions and strategies, of course, need to be implemented at an operational level as well, embedded into all company processes. Every department needs to have its targets for reduction. Of course, once you get that strategy in place, and I can assure you it's not easy, it's also about the culture and the know-how and everything that the speakers before me talked about, you need, of course, also to monitor the progress. So check against the targets. Are you in line to achieve your net zero target by a certain date? Adjust if you're not, and of course, start all over again. So of course, this is a process which takes time, which takes a lot of experience, a lot of know-how, and putting together all of us. It's not just one company, it's not just one country, it's all the world. It's something that it's affecting us all, unfortunately. And digitalization, we see that it's transforming from discussion about digitalization to a discussion about how can we make sustainability through digitalization. So also when automating our industries, our plants and so on, we need to make sure that also those robots, can be reused, can be recycled, can be repaired. And also we need to make sure of the energy that they consume, of the emissions that they produce. So there are different aspects also when thinking about digitalization and how to make it more sustainable. So this is something that we are really passionate about. It's core in our strategy, and we see that more and more companies are focusing on this. There is still a lot to do. Everybody's saying that we're not on track on a global level. So yeah, I invite all of you to start also to think about how we can together work better on this, also on an international level. I think you're on mute, Rui.
Yeah. So you're saying it's a long journey and we need too much time for
I'm
that.
not here yet.
Okay, thank you very much.
Okay, now I hear you. Thank you, Rui.
Şimdi Alp Bey, beni duyabiliyorsunuz herhalde.
Now, Mr. Arif, I think you can, Mr. Avni, you can hear me, I suppose.
Ege Genç İş Adamları Derneği
Yes, and you are the chairman of AGIAT, the Aegean Young Business Association. So you have also an angel investment network as well, and you are making investment to digital implementations. AGIAT and as the AGIAT angels in Izmir and also in the Aegean region, could you please talk a little bit about the investments that you have made in that geography? And what do you want to do? How do you want to change the industries? Oh, thank you. And I also would like to thank all the participants. Now we want to greet you with my deepest respects. I also would like to say that, correction, on 2019, we have become an Aegean Young Businessman. This is the name that we are using right now. Oh, yes, I realize that. Yes, I'm sorry, I just skipped it. The Aegean Young Businessmen Association. Oh, well, when you are working a lot in the long years in the business, you can make some mistakes. Oh, it's okay. Of course. Well, thank you. And in 1990, we have been founded as an association. We have approximately 700 members, and we want to increase the competitiveness in the society. And particularly in the Aegean region, one of the most important things is entrepreneurship. Since 2011, we are making studies, but in 2015, the Aegean Angels have been founded. And that is the reason why we started to actually change a little bit of the direction. And as you know, in the Aegean and Izmir region, Melek Yatırım is accredited. We have 50 investors, and we have made investment for about $1.5 billion. And I'm going to be talking about I am going to be talking about my personal experiences. I'm not going to be talking about the technical part of it. I'm going to be talking about some certain stories, entrepreneurial stories. With the foundation of Aegean Angels, I have attended to many panels about entrepreneurship, and I listened to many presentations, but for about hundreds of times, I was also involved in entrepreneurship entrepreneurial meetings, and some I was just an attendee, and some I was also supported. And all these talents were all actually entrepreneurs. And I have witnessed on how they started up with a wonderful idea and developed. And it is very exciting to me, actually. So it is something that is, the lives are changing with digitalization, actually. That also can be a wording to be saying for that. And I'm going to be talking about a few stories about this. I hope that it can inspire. And I have a video, maybe you can share it, and I can start talking about this entrepreneurship. The first one is Art Labs. It's an art laboratory. It's, for instance, Art Labs has, you think that you are actually using an e-commerce website or a furniture website on arts. So you are checking out where the furniture can actually be placed in your dining room. Would it actually match with your carpet or not, etc. So Uğur is our entrepreneurs, and he's explaining it to you, but we're going to see it in the meantime. So for instance, you can check actually whether the couch can actually be suiting to your dining room or not. And the program has artificial intelligent elements as well. And that's the reason why the customer experience is wonderful. And not only the furnitures, but now you can see here also here in the video, in every part of retails or in restaurants or in e-commerce companies or in dress and clothing companies, we can use this application. So now they have an asset of $7.5 billion of an asset. There are two things that I really liked. Those who are using the Art Labs technology can have a chance to impact on a global level. Not only it is benefiting, it's very beneficial for the country indeed, but it's on a global level. It can also be very beneficial, of course. Or the founder of Art Labs has also won an actually competition that we opened up, and during that period of time he was in high school and he won that reward. Later on, after the university, he came to us again and started up his story. This is one brief story about this. This is a smart e-commerce implementation application. And the second story here is not only the businessman and as a businessman, but this is also an entrepreneurship that affected me individually, personally. It is about social responsibility was very much important for social justice, and of course, digitalization can be used, and surplus food is one of this. We also are the investors of this entrepreneurship. This is a digital platform in which you use waste food. The waste foods are for recycling a second sales or a donation to a company can be used here. With the artificial intelligence, these are automatically classified. The food can be classified. So some of them can go for donation or can be sold on the second time. Or if not possible, these food waste can go for feed for the animals or for recycling. So then we can actually reach up to zero waste food. And the aim here is sustainability and also no to hunger, etc. This is also abiding by the rules of UNDP as well. And for 4 years, the chain markets are using it, and it is actually making goodness right now. It has its own ecosystem. It has saved more than 19,000 tons of food, and the carbon emission has been eliminated as well in quite a great amount. And there is, of course, there's a long road that we need to go further. We need to serve to goodness, but with digitalization, that goodness can be done in a much more effective way. Without digitalization, of course, this surplus food wouldn't actually help that much. But right now, with digitalization, we have now the opportunity of transformation. Now, this is a business model, and goodness, on the other hand, can create a big impact through digitalization. So we can get better results compared to conventional business models with digitalization. And cognitive is a third business model here. Cognitive, as you see here, is with camera appearances. You are making you make the procedures, and you can actually work on it, work on the data. It means that, for instance, there's a shelf on the market. You can actually find bad fruit inside it, and you can actually renew it, or you can actually follow up any kind of a failure in the factory. A giant automotive factory is using it in Turkey. If there are faults in the procedures or in the processes of the factory, or if there's any kind of a mistake ongoing, that camera is choosing it up and finding it. And on the other hand, in the shopping malls, for instance, it helps controlling the masks right now, nowadays. It has also a machine learning as well in the technology, so it's becoming more intelligent every day. So it really understands a bad tomato better each and every day. It's using also artificial intelligence and creates a new opportunity for the companies using it. It's very really attractive. One company that is not very digitalized, for instance, can use it as well. And there's also another company that is very much digitalized, but they are also competing with each other, even though one is futuristic and the other one is coming a century ago from back. But they both are using it. Albert is another one here. It's a personalized health assistant. It's a private nurse, and she is talking as well. And for chronic patients, it is very vital for those patients to use regularly their drugs, and that by actually not following properly their health duties, the 200,000 people lose their lives, according to data. Now it has an artificial intelligence inside it. It is reminding the patient about the drugs they have to use, and it makes a follow-up of the patients, and this data can be also shared with the doctor, with the physician, and also with the family. So it is easy to see whether the patient is receiving, getting their drugs or not. And particularly it is very easy for the elderly to use, and the reminder is also made with voice. Of course, during the pandemic, we are passing on through a critical time. So that is the reason why from time to time you cannot always reach to your elderly parents anytime you want to. So this can be very vital for you. So these are businesses and business models that change the lives. And I believe that these are good practices so far. And I think I used time properly. Yes, but Mr. Ajlan is not using the time very shortly. He's not using his time in a long way, but you can actually talk a little bit more. You still have time, Mr. Ajlan. Now, as for the digitalization, of course, in the banking sector, in the Garanti Bank, in the Osmanlı Bank, and the other companies of Doğuş Group, and of course, due to the business, the way of doing business, different models have been used, I suppose. Different businesses, works have been done. What were they and what kind of results did you receive? So what happens in the banking world? Yes, I know nothing is going to be as it was before, because I remember in the past, just underneath the Media Plaza, the Garanti Bank had a branch, and the staff over there, the poor staff over there, in the last 15 days of December had to work until 12 o'clock midnight. So I guess not only the Garanti Bank, of course, but in many banks, I suppose a more humanitarian way of working is realized due to digitalization, I suppose, isn't it? In Doğuş Automotive, what happened, for instance? Maybe you can explain it with certain stories. Yes, absolutely, with pleasure. And I also was listening to the other panels very attentively. God gave 2 years and 1 mouth, and I tried to use my 2 years in order to understand this period of time where we live in. I just want to talk a little bit about the sectors. For instance, in the industrial sector, the Industry 4.0 has been initiated, and the robotic technologies has been initiated. So a great amount of transformation has been realized. And on the health sector, you can also make surgery from remotely. We have such technologies right now. In the retailing sector, by the way, in particular in online sales and with e-commerce, we have right now better services that can make better analysis. In such period, for instance, I had also an experience about this. I'm going to be talking about the banking system, but before that, I'd like to talk a little bit about the sectoral changes. The automotive sector indeed have used these changes. There are 3 critical changes here, transformation. For instance, the first one is electrical vehicles, which is very much important, particularly in Far East in China. The production of automobiles have converted into electrical vehicles. And also in Europe, similar changes occur. A connected car, in particular, its structures that generally use the Internet of Things are using it. Now you have the opportunity actually to repair a car remotely. Well, you can immediately online access to the service, to the car service, and they can tell you remotely on what to do. Logistics as well is also another area of change. But let me just talk a little bit about the automotive sector. The logistics systems of Doğuş Automotive is making automations. And this is creating and supplying the necessary products for the customers at the time or at the exact time that the customer is wishing for. Now, with robotic systems, of course, we can prepare all these parts for the cars, and due to the fact that we have made investments in robotics. So if a car broke in the middle of the road, we can immediately intervene the situation. So we have converted the systems as well in that area in Doğuş. And also in the Garanti Bank and the banking system, there are also developments that were ongoing. And as you know, particularly when we were in the banking sector, the ATMs was a very important technological revolution. But now today, the payment systems are right now made by non-banking systems. Fintechs, for instance, are integrated with the banks, and now the operation can be done together with them. And also with the arrangements in the legislation, there is an open banking as well. The customer can get any product that they want from any bank that they are seeking for. İbrahim Betir has founded Bank Express in 1992. He wanted to design it as a banking market in which they are going to also bring up and present different products of different brands. And most of the people couldn't understand what he is trying to do. But nowadays, the banks, due to this open banking, anybody can look for the product that they are seeking for from any bank. Mr. Turan has said, while we are doing this, of course, we are not comprising from human resources, but we have hybrid systems. We need to use the human resources, of course, but the routine business should be done by the robots. And in the end of the day, what human beings were doing, what people were doing in the past are now being done by the robots. So now that brought us more creative people could be used in the productivity area, and the products have been manufactured by robots. So the Garanti Bank is very prior in digitalization. We started it in the mid-90s. In Garanti technology, there are friends who created a system infrastructure, and that system has speeded up through time, and they also look for the customers and understand the customers' needs, and those smart technologies have also been used in the bank. Is it sufficient? Of course, it's not sufficient. Indeed, new systems are coming into life, and in conventional banking, there are pretty much of a change. In the past years, in Doğuş Automotive, in cooperation with Volkswagen, we have initiated a company with Volkswagen. In 1999, we founded it, and in the 2000s, it started up working. The Volkswagen Doğuş Bank financial company aims to get the finances of the customer whenever they need, when they need, or wherever they need. Volkswagen Bank, for instance, is a very big bank, has one headquarter in Germany, has no branches, is totally online and digitalized. So those who are working in the headquarters, rather than working in the branches or in the headquarters, banking system has totally changed in it. Maybe the question might be, Well, won't there be any branches in the future? Of course there would be. That accession cannot be done immediately. And when the electrical vehicle come in our daily lives, will the conventional cars become scrap? No, of course not. But there will be an accession, indeed. The competition, by the way, is done in very difficult situations, and those who cannot abide by those rules will be excluded, and that is quite clear. But don't. But we need to actually follow this, follow all the changes. Maybe we shouldn't actually rush or feeling a haste in as a matter of fact, but we need to follow up. Indeed, we need to follow the new era, and for that we need to have an infrastructure. The ecosystem is as well important. Mr. Alp has said all these new entrepreneurships are the adaptations of old systems to the new world. In the past, for instance, it was us, the young people, who were saying to the elderly that they should get their drug, but now we need more digitalization and more technology because people cannot be together all the time. And in the automotive system, for instance, this ecosystem, of course, while you're producing an electrical vehicle, many other entrepreneurs with these face recognition systems can also understand and comprehend what is going on around that area, in that car, for instance. So then a certain amount of a demand occurs, and that new demand brings up new entrepreneurs in our lives. If we create that ecosystem, then we create an area of curiosity. We find people who create, and on the other hand, with the help of digitalization, we go further for more better days in the future, because we can also spend more time for ourselves rather than dealing with errands. Yes, and I would like to ask a question to Ms. Leyla.
Tabii Covid döneminde en azından ülkemiz özelinde hızlandı.
Digitalization has increased in COVID period, and what are the novelties that our business world is going to encounter in the new era, and what is the benefit of digitalization in order to reach corporate responsibilities and sustainability targets? I mean, are these sensors saying, dear Coca-Cola, you are drinking, you are wasting too much water, please be careful? How is it warning you? I mean, because we want sustainability, we don't want to waste resources of the world. Does it say, do not swallow every resource in the world? Does it say like that? Great. I mean, just a moment. Aren't you adding water into Coca-Cola? I don't understand. Of course, without water, it's not going to happen. But when it comes to the first part of your question, as of this moment on the global, we mainly discuss the similar issues. We are slowly but surely discussing about digitalization and technology. There is another thing that we are discussing right now. It is related to sustainable development targets.
Ve yeni konuşmaya başladığımız, işte dünyada da ESG olarak bilinen, sanırım doğru çevirdim Türkçe, çevresel, toplum ve kurumsal yönetişime bir de veriyi eklemeyi konuşuyoruz şu anda.
And we are also discussing how to add data, and this is something that we need to add as well. And the ethics of data, how to use data in the best ways. We have to be discussing this.
Diğer konuştuğumuz konu da çokça.
And another issue is that
Biraz önce bahsettiğim birkaç arkadaşımız da burada tekrar vurguladığı.
Few friends of ours is also was talking about the development of experiences, and also in order to develop the technologies and these digitalizations, we need to have new people with ability. Taking a look to the development plans, we live in such a world that why are we not talking about digitalization? It's because that this digitalization, as you said in the beginning of the introductory, in your introductory speech, you were saying that digitalization has started 10, 15 years ago. But of course, that if a company has started, let's say, digitalization, and a new advanced technology has to have also meaningful targets, and that is the reason why the business models have also been localized. So this is called a new operational system of a company. So a few friends of ours were saying that, okay, we're asking what type of assets did you create? Yes, this is the right question. Maybe we were asking this question 3-4 years ago because we need to know what we are doing. But right now, data and technology. Should I start or should I start? Should I put it or not? We do not have such a luxury anymore because in the next, we are going to the next maturity level. Those who have initiated to this journey, first of all, were using the data and they decided to actually create new business models. Mr. Ipes was talking about new startup ideas and some developments that can actually help the world. But on the other hand, we also have seen that in the sustainable development goals, indirectly can actually create an indirect impact as well. In CCI, I was telling you that within the supply chain, a factory of ours, we have made a artificial replica of the factory that we had. So by using data and technology, we started seeing what is going on there. And because it was giving us pre-alarms or pre-signals, we could actually make some improvements, for instance, in energy and also in water. CGI systems, of course, were our first priority in Coca-Cola. There are plenty of projects going on, but of course, by using the digitalization and technology, we have seen that we are creating a positive aspect here as well. And we are one of the rare companies that is using such technologies, and we are sharing that information with many other companies as well. We are constantly talking about the environment, perhaps, but within the sustainable development goals, there are certain, there's another area where we can actually achieve with technology. And I say that technology is overcoming barriers. For instance, there are many friends who cannot involve in the business world can now be involved in the business world with the support of the technology. And that can be done with many technologies. For instance, the women can be much more employed. They also in the production sector, the women have a place. The women have now a space for themselves in all areas of business. And on the other hand, disabled people, I do not like to call the word disabled, it's a biased name. No matter who you are, no matter where you come from, no matter what types of barriers you have, by the way, we need to change the definition of disability because we can overcome it with technology. I would like to give you a few examples of it. For instance, I am also one of the member of an NGO, and we are trying to actually support the women who want to return to the business life. Yes, this is technology. Technology eliminates barriers and technology helps us provide some talents.
to the people who don't have those talents. And we help the employees by learning, for instance, automation, and they can be included in the labor force in that way. And also with them association with the people having some hearing problems, we have provided a new AI platform. You mentioned that in AI platform, in machine learning, first and foremost, you make the machine learn. You have to teach the machine. And this is called tagging, labeling. And for doing this, people must be used. And university students, our friends, they could be used. By the way, this is the platform we developed, which is an open source platform, and it is safe and secure. We want everyone to get use of it. With them association, we have taught our friends, and they are currently doing machine learning, tagging and labeling. And many institutions can also get use of digitalization and technology in that way. There are many improvements to the environment, to us, in terms of its KPIs, and it can also add a lot of benefits to our customers. And altogether, we can eliminate many barriers altogether. For instance, that food system Alp has mentioned is very crucial. This is the way that we need to be using technology. And in CCI, as Digital Technologies Unit, thanks to the support of these associations, we can also provide opportunities who could not take part in the labor force prior to that. We could offer many opportunities to our friends, and purpose versus profit will be the change that you're going to see in the future. It's not about profitability, or else it's not about financial gains, but at the same time, we can also give back what we get from the society. This is going to be one of the important focal points. And maybe it's like there is this fragile capitalism. This is a new trend in the USA. Some people who are rich, who have more money, they are advocating this kind of opinions. Thank you very much. Now, Turan, we mentioned that this digitalization is something that you are focusing on your jobs center, and it started many years ago. When I visited your factory, maybe this is something that you are accustomed to, but I feel I'm always monitored, because sensors, I know they are monitoring the parts on the production belts, production lines, but we feel like we are being monitored. This is how I feel. The digitalization, you mentioned that zeros and ones. So how did you implement it to your lifestyles, management styles? In the past, you were calling the people, you were calling them, or else you were just paying visits to the employees. But how are you doing it right now? Are you texting messages to them? And how is it your relations in your own lives? Because normally we don't speak to our kids. Are we texting messages from one room to another room? How is it going on your side? Ruhi Bey, what you mentioned is real. Yes, that is correct. Our communication with the younger people is based on texts, and sometimes we have to also follow some games. This is what you need to do. By the way, we manage a very young audience, and in order for us to have better communication with the youth, we have to be knowledgeable about this issue. And because of our profession as well, because of this topic that we are working on, we have to be on the parallel line with them. Or else there is this generation gap. And generation gap, I'm saying this all the time, I think is the biggest gap that we have had up until this time. Maybe, yes, we were saying that in the past there was this generation gap with our fathers, grandfathers. We were not using the same language, but there's no language anymore. I mean, with our own children, I think that gap between us, I think this is unprecedented. This is something biggest in the world. I'm an engineer, by the way, and we were using T rulers, and our generation had these things. For instance, we were having these calculators, calculating those 4 different mathematical calculations, and maybe you can remember those computers. But you were using Texas Instruments hand device for cosinus and sinus implementations and calculations. Yes, it was a very improved, advanced device for that moment, and it was prohibited to bring calculator because there were certain rulers that you can use as a replacement of calculator. Okay, without further ado, and I can tell you that lifestyles have changed immensely. When I was on the airplane, I was just receiving copies of fax, and I was writing certain things manually, and when I just, landed, I was again sending faxes. Turan Bey, I guess you were giving your instructions in that way, but when I was Dubai for the first time, I was carrying a fax machine on my lap, and I was just, on the plane like that. But I think we work more compared to other years, and this is an obligation, and I can tell you this very honestly, but maybe you can get a bit angry at me, but this is something that I dislike. When you send an email, there is a reply saying out of office, but do not do this, please, because we are online 24/7, so we don't have this concept of a place or a space. We are very much accustomed to working on a hybrid place. If we do not have to come to office, so it means that we can also respond to our emails one way or another, right? Unfortunately, we are lagging behind from the US and European countries. We have to work more. It's difficult for us to close that gap if we just work the same hours like them. We have to work more. And if we just do it, I believe we will just close that gap with other developed countries. And I'm really happy that many people are working like that. But I mean, sometimes they say that to see is to believe. So maybe we can watch that video. After that, I conclude my speech. Thank you.
Evet, sanırım videomuz bitti. Evet, şimdi buradaki fikir yani artık tamamen...
Well, yes, we have all watched the video. The idea is to have certain places that do not require any electricity, and people, by the way, it was prepared in 2018. We have much more developed things as of this moment. And I'd like to say a few words about sustainability and startups. Well, yes, okay. And previously, Leila mentioned that this must be enabling for our lives as well. Technologies must enable our lives. For instance, we have established a new investment company called Vestel Venture. And one of the projects that we invested on is WeWalk. Is a smart button for the blind people. They can get this GPS signals. They have this smart walking stick, and it gives vibration to the people, and it's something which is making the lives of blind people easier. And by the United Nations, it was selected one of the best products of the year. So we are very proud of that. Many young friends of ours developed that, and R&D and production facilities were offered to our young friends, and we became a partner to this project. And Ajlan Bey was also talking about autonomous car beforehand. And about this, I guess for the last 6 years, we've been investing on this. There's CY Vision concept. This holographic images can affect the eye of a person, and it can create that vision as if it's just next to you. This is an important technology, and Ajlan Bey was also managing some popular brands before, and on those popular brands right now are paying attention to this rather than just looking at the screens, different screens at the same time. You see those holograms just wherever you look. And this is something great, I think. And there's another investment that we make, BioLive. The ones who live in Ayvalık region, there are some olive oil factories, and there is too much waste of this seed of the olive. And in the BioLive, we can use a seed, the pit of the olive, as a waste, and it can be turned into a plastic. So we have more than 10 investments, but these are related to environment. That's why I'm prioritizing them. Turan Bey, just a small contribution, I just want to say. You mentioned olives and Ayvalık, and my olive garden is in Ayvalık, and there is something called olive pomace, and it stinks actually. It gives a very bad odor. If your initiative just eliminates that pomace smell, you will be honored as the best citizen of Ayvalık. So we, by the way, tried it out in our refrigerators, and hopefully it's going to be successful, and it was also appreciated by other investors. And from the startups, you get the minority shares, not the big shares. So commitments for sustainability could be managed, and I think this is a great project for Turkey. Yes, this is more than appropriate for Turkey. And this is something that we need to do here. Digitalization is something like in our days, it's not the mission or the vision, it's just the life itself. We have established Vestel Express stores. We have 100 of them, and Ajlan Bey was giving an example from Tansash. And even the retail sector is involved in this process. Vestel Expresses, for instance, normally our stores are like 300 square meter, 400 square meter, but in our express stores, it's smaller, like 60 square meter, 50 square meter, but there are 3 screens. Those are smart screens, and very young, experienced persons are knowledgeable about these screens. Virtual screens, these are new space, virtual space. So from these spaces, you can select those products, and there's also augmented reality. Previous Alp was mentioning that. So through augmented reality, those screens, you can make your selections, and this has taken my attention. For instance, your TV, your refrigerator, whether it's going to fit in your room, or whether it's going to be fitted in your kitchen. Is it going to be stuck in the door or not? You can see everything, and in just 24 hours, these products could be mounted, could be assembled in your house. Companies who can't catch up with this change, unfortunately, will fail in the competition, but I can tell you this at the very end. It has also been mentioned before, and having this infrastructure in the years of 1980s when Özal was the president of Turkey, Türk Telekom made huge investment for infrastructure, and from analog to digital transformation. Ajlan Bey is also a member of the board of directors of Turkish Telecom. We had this frog lip. It was the frog lip, definitely. And Turkey has this opportunity again in front of herself. Turkey can have that frog lip again. We have the human resources, ambition, enthusiasm, and excitement for it. And in the past, as you know, for the startups, they thought that they needed to go to Israel or San Francisco, but hopefully in the future people will come to Turkey, and the ones who know San Francisco know it better. San Francisco and Izmir are very similar to one another. If our geographies are our destinies, then we can be a new Silicon Valley, because Izmir is very similar to San Francisco geographically again. So hopefully our youngsters will also make us happy in that respect. Okay, thank you very much. Now I'm going to switch into English.
Adriana, what are the difficulties that companies, I mean your customers, usually face in implementing these technologies, such digital technologies, and how can you help them, or how are you helping them?
Thank you for the question. This is a very good topic. Well, we have actually done a study this year to understand what are these difficulties. And we have feedback from more than 7,000 business executives spanning 19 countries and 16 industries. And the top 3 difficulties they mentioned were, first of all, uncertainty as how to embed sustainability into business processes and IT systems. Second, how to align the proposed actions with the overall business strategy. And third, how to prove return of investment. So now how can software solutions help to tackle that? First of all, talking about the uncertainty to embed into sustainability into business processes and IT systems, what we do is to add sustainability as a new dimension of success into all our solutions and all the business transactions. And this is core for our strategy. And we want to enable our customers to tackle this problem, which is not trivial, as we mentioned. Imagine the way you have cost and price in so many systems and in all the business transactions you have out there. Emissions should also be present everywhere. You want to buy a raw material? You should know not only the supplier and the price, but also the emissions that you're buying. You need to transport your product to your final consumers. You should know the price, of course, but also how much CO2 you emit when transporting it in order to make better decisions on which way to go. When we talk about how we can align the proposed actions with overall business strategy, the business strategy of a company, of course, should be aligned as well also with this new dimension of success, the sustainability one. And how we are enabling our customers is first to be accountable and compliant, of course, with all the environmental regulations that they need to do because these are mandatory. But second, we also look at how to be more efficient in terms of both financial and sustainability aspects and reach their competitive edge as well. And third, we want them to be desirable for their customers. Customers are very important. And also Leila was talking before me about that. We need to understand what the customers want and make sure that we engage them correctly and reach them, or even create a new type of consumer, the green consumer. Of course, we have the power also to influence how consumers behave. So we would like to inform them, to communicate correctly, but also to reach those ones that are already there and they are asking for more sustainable products. Of course, we said it's also difficult to prove return of investment, as well as with digitalization. Maybe with digitalization, it's easier. But when you talk about sustainability and you know that you are reducing CO2 emissions, and what you get instead as results is not immediate, because we talk about climate change for tens of years, we need to understand how we can measure that and how we can prove that we have a return on investment. So companies still need to be profitable, of course, and to prove this investment works. So for this, sustainability data needs to be put in connection with the financial data. Always, it cannot be alone. Sustainability data and financial data. Mix it and understand how our sustainable actions are also profitable, but also how our profitability is also sustainable for years to come. And all companies, of course, are looking at how they can be sustainable tomorrow. But if they want, they can be sustainable immediately, but they would go bankrupt. So we always need to make sure that we connect these two dimensions, financial and sustainability data, in order to prove the return of the investment. And of course, then there are also other more specific, but also more general difficulties, like Leila was, and also other speakers were mentioning about the know-how of the resources that we have in the company and about the culture, because we have been in this industrial revolution, Industry 4.0 for many years now, and we have a certain way of thinking, but maybe we did not think enough about also the sustainability aspects. So it's also about the culture and about the mindset that we have and how we implement that every day.
Okay. You said that maybe we have to create a new type of customer. What kind of customer is that, and how can you create a customer? As we know, maybe you know, we believe that customer is king, right? So are you going to convince them, or are you going to make some treats, maybe discounts or whatsoever?
Very good point. So we see that there is a lot of difference also between the generations. Younger generations are already focused on sustainability, and they kind of feel the pressure of the years to come, and that they need to be more sustainable, and also the actions that they take are already more sustainable, and they look for products and services which are already sustainable, and we can see that every day. But there are also other generations which were not born with that mentality, and which we need to, of course, to educate and to communicate the right way. As I was saying, we talk about climate change for many years, but we didn't take it seriously, not seriously enough at least, because we could not see the effects immediately. And now some people are starting to ask, okay, but what about my children? What about my grandchildren? So we need to educate them that this has an impact on the generations to come, but also on us right now. I mean, you were talking about your olive oil. You see the impacts are already happening. So it's also about educating and letting people understand that this is already happening now. And unfortunately, we are already pretty late, and we need to act now. So it's all a matter of culture and education and understanding, because people are also open to learn all the time. And of course, sometimes it's also a matter of just not producing some products anymore, because if you put something on the market, you also create a certain demand for it. if you don't put it on the market anymore, it's easier also to not have the demand for it.
Okay, thank you. Şimdi
Well, now
let me switch. Şimdi Alp Bey'e bir soru yöneltmek istiyorum.
I'm going to ask a question to Alp.
Burada katılımcıların da teşvikleriyle biz yarın
Tomorrow,
bu ikinci bir Silikon Vadisi'ni yaratmak için çalışacağız.
in order to have a second Silicon Valley, I believe you are going to intensify your works, and I'll be following it.
Buna fikri takip denir.
And it's like intellectual follow-up, let's say. I'm going to follow it.
Şimdi bu dijitalleşme meselesinde yine
In the digitalization issue again, what are the trends in the world? What is going on? In what areas we see more intensified digitalization? I think this is important for you. Maybe in those areas you are much more active and you're going to support technological investments. And in recent times, especially in the last 2 or 3 years, in Turkey, with $1 million of evaluations, appraisals, certain gaming companies have been
iş insanları gibi
procured by some foreign companies, and this is exciting, I think, for many young business people, like in Aegean region maybe. So
programı kurmak istiyorsunuz.
I guess you want to establish a gamification center, game acceleration center.
Oyun şirketleri çıkacağına ilişkin umudumuzu güçlendirecek haberler.
What can you say? Are there new hopeful news?
Kapsamlı soru için önce Turan Bey'in ve sizin göndermenizle başlayalım.
Well, thank you very much for this comprehensive company. The new Silicon Valley idea is something that we are also discussing about for Izmir. And of course, Izmir has plenty of attraction points, and we can actually attract many talents, and we're making studies about this. Indeed, there are plenty of trends around the world, but the most important reference point here is that last week the Web Summit has been made in Lisbon, and taking a look to the outcomes of Lisbon, the most important issue that has been talked was the metaverse. According to the reports, not according to myself, but according to the reports, metaverse was very much important. So all the business models due to digitalization has changed, but this one is going to totally change everything. This is such a technology, and it has been in our lives for a long period of time. Maybe we didn't make the follow-up about it, but the popularization is made by Mark Zuckerberg from Facebook, the CEO of Facebook. And later on, Microsoft and Teams has made it public that they're going to make a similar thing in the Teams as well. Metaverse is a meta and verse, so it is a universe and meta was combined together. So in the platform, Serdar Kuzuloğlu has made a nice comparison. In Orhan Veli, the poet Orhan Veli has said, metaverse is heard, but is not is in a place where it is not known. So it is actually online worlds. It's about online worlds. So you have this, you can use those glasses and you can have fun with your friends. You can go for a voyage. You can make shopping and you can make meetings. Maybe these meetings are going to be made in metaverse in the next coming decades. And if I have to give an example for it, for instance, Travis Scott, from over a fortnight, he has made a concert, and 12.3 billion people has watched it. So there are, of course, our companies do have also and are going to have an avatar as we do as individuals. So they have to have avatars, and their products have to stay as in this platform. So in the Web Summit in Portugal, it says that in 10 years everything is going to occur, but due to digitalization and pandemic, things have developed in 1 year rather than 3-4 years. So 10 years is not short and not long. On the other hand, being in it or not is totally one of the methods that companies have to think of.
kendi para birimiyle çalışacak.
And besides, they're going to work on their own coins. Why do people are so much into NFT? Because when you think about metaverse, then it seems everything becomes a little bit more obvious. Some people of us are collectioners and are buying paintings. Those who are buying NFT can actually exhibit it in their own metaverses. So of course, these are technologies that are ongoing right now, and I just wanted to talk a little bit about this as a response of your question. And for game development, we as businessmen are giving very much importance to game development because, as you said, there are plenty of wonderful samples, and we are taking very strong steps to be a leader in this area in the world. So there's a great amount of a generation in the game industry. There are 3 million of people who are using it. So if we take a look to the sport industry, it's $480 billion and between $200 billion is actually a certain type of an amount that we can talk about. On 2030, esport, for instance, is going to get everything. So I don't think that it is absurd. So we as AEF are making studies for game development because on 2021, not only in the Turkey, but then all around the world, in the first 6 months, $740 billion of an investment has been made for from startups, and a large amount from out of $3, $1 has been given to game development. There are 36 million people in Turkey who are gamers, and as you said before, we have a company that is unicorn, 1.8 billion. They reached up to $1.8 billion. And it actually has made a great difference. It has actually exceeded many industrial companies as an asset, as a value. There are PC games, etc., but there are also hyper-casual games, which has been consumed on mobile. And there are plenty of softwares here that that go around the world to work. So we as a vision want to keep these software developers here in Turkey, and that's the reason why we needed to create a center as such. What we are going to make investment for those who want to make a development in games, and we want to make strategic developments and support for them. So we are going to bring up together the investors and also the software developers, the game developers. And for 10 years, we are working in entrepreneurship since 10 years, and we think that this is very much important to bring up the new generation to work in that area. They're open to sharing, they're open to collaboration, they're open to many other things that previous generations weren't open to. So I suppose that they are quite inspiring as well. And what we intend to do is not to actually fail in this area as well. So if we bring everything up together, as Ms. Leyla has said, actually digitalization and sustainable development goals have to be combined together. And within this context, as AEF, almost 7 months ago, we have made a General Council meeting, and we have also added up our circular into a circular about the development goals. UN development goals are also added in our circular. So gaming was, for instance, once just the time to spend, just this area where you spend time, but it's become a really business, and metaverse is also very much important. Not the consumer, we should also find ways to not only be the consumer of this digital world, but also the producers of this digital world. It's a quite comprehensive answer to your question, perhaps, but I hope I helped you. We have completed the time, but I have 2 short questions to all of the participants here. One is,
veya kalkması beklenen pozisyonlar var.
there are positions that are no longer going to survive due to digitalization. What will these people be? What will happen to those people? Are there any type of actually thought to bring these people together and find ways to employ them? What is your opinion about this? Well, this is also something that I am thinking as well. Actually, each nation brings up its own opportunities. This disruption activities is actually such a type of transformation. One side is disrupted, the other one is structurized on the other side. Ms. Leyla has said, for instance, the employment of the women in many areas, and Alpa said about the software sector. In particularly, we need to also attract the young softwares. Now they are even much more integrated to the outer world. So if the youngsters can actually develop themselves and can give more force to this digital development, they can also work in a company within a team of a software company in the United States or in Europe. This digitalization actually can solve problems of unemployment as well. But the problem here is that you can actually adapt yourself and prepare yourself to these new developing businesses. You have to work, you have to be curious, you have to learn, you have to train yourself. And on the other side, of course, when there's a disruption in the conventional sectors, but in the new developing sectors, there are great opportunities in these. This is what I believe. And in each level and for everyone. Well, thank you. Well, I do agree with you, but I also would like to make an addition here. And indeed, of course, the government, the state also has to understand it and has to add it to the educational curriculum as well. We need to find people who can be mentoring these young people. So this is also this is a duty of the state. In order, there are so many people who are really who are afraid. Those who are in the university or those who are preparing for the university are right now a little bit more frightened on what where they are going to go. Ms. Leyla, what do you think? Well, I can only make an addition to what Mr. Ajan said. Be curious, develop yourself, and I would like to give a few statistics. There are certain studies that we have made, and they show that the completeness of one person's half-life has increased to 2 years. That means that 6 months, what you learn is getting older in 6 months. So you have to learn new things. Mr. iPad was talking about new technologies. And of course, there is a new white paper about new technologies, indeed. If you do not focus yourself on developing yourself, the regulations, the institutions, so whatever this community or the society does, you will be lagging behind as a person. So as a person, what you have to do is to develop yourself. Curiosity isn't sufficient anymore, valid. You need to create an output of that curiosity. You need to develop yourself and you need to pay effort for that. And we try to give investment to those who are making that effort for themselves. Of course, there are some conventional businesses are not going to survive, but there will be new opportunities that will come up. Only in software development, there are 98 million software developers are searched for right now, and that's the reason why the people who do not have that competency, in a few years, they can actually be trained and can find a place for themselves in that space. So there are 2 programs that we have initiated in-house. One is data analysis, and the other one is, in particular, the technologies for production. And we try to actually disseminate it on the group level as well. Well, I'd love to give the floor to Adriana.
Well, what do you think about this topic, Adriana? There will be some people who will lose maybe their jobs because their positions will become extinct. So what should we do for them?
Thank you for the question. This is a question that I have been answering for years, since I was also focused on the digitalization some years ago. But now I will talk about it looking from the sustainability angle, because I think the speakers before me just explained it very well. Mankind has always transformed itself. It's an evolution. Yeah, nothing disappears. It just reinvents and transforms into something else. So we need to make sure that these people are enabled to educate themselves on the new areas. And in the sustainability space, there is plenty of space for new jobs as well. We see more and more new chief sustainability officers, sustainability managers, sustainability experts of every kind. Governments need to implement policies and regulations. They need to check out that this is happening. We have sustainable finance coming also in the banking industry. We need experts also in that area as well. Software also, it's an opportunity. Everybody is developing software around sustainability today as well. So it's just a matter of educating and reinventing and transforming. It's not always easy. Yeah, we all know it has never been easy, but it's in the end, it's the way things work.
Okay, thank you very much. Şimdi Turan Bey, çok özür dilerim. Sırayı şaşırdım.
Turan Bey, I'm so sorry. I just am confused about
Şimdi bu dijitalleşmeyle beraber bilmiyorum bizim
the turns.
fabrikalarda meydancılar olur temizliği yapan belki.
In the past, in the factories, maybe you were having some cleaning people, but maybe you might have some factory robots cleaning the floors. I mean, what should we do for the people who lost their positions because of the changes in the digitalization? Adriana actually responded very well, and these are not actually something that are not going away. These are not disappearing. Yes, they are transforming. There are automatic machineries, the smart machineries, they are cleaning the environment. But believe me that in Manisa organized industry zone, it's not only for us, but for everyone. There is this problem of not finding employees. No, we can't find employees. There's 4% of unemployment in Manisa after Kocaeli organized industrial zone. We have the least ratio of unemployment in Manisa. After the pandemic, I don't know, but maybe my friends can also comment on this. There's a very big recovery attempts, improvements, turnover increases on the white collar and blue collar, and digitalization brings some easiness on finding job. For instance, you are right now working on a hybrid basis, or you work from your houses on a remote basis. So right now you can have easier interviews. There are different platforms, and also changing the job is much easier. And as employers, I think we have to think about that. I agree with everyone. For a person who can qualify themselves, there is no problem of not finding a job. It's only the thing that you need to develop yourselves, improve yourselves, because data is available. Everything is open on the sources. For instance, there is new language programs, and I am on the Chinese class. And on the internet, there is many things which is free. You can learn many things. It's free. We should be hopeful. People just need to have more qualifications. I think they will catch up with this need. I don't think we have this problem. Okay, thank you very much.
Turan Bey'in bıraktığı yerden devam edeyim. Turnover'ın özellikle çok artması biraz hibrit.
I'll continue where Turan has left. This is very much related to the culture of the corporations. Unfortunately, if we can't come together, we can't have this culture of the corporation, and people can't feel that they own this culture, and turnover increases too much. And when it comes to 21st century, capabilities, we have this life school project. And vocational high school projects are gathered together with the business world. This is a training program, and this concept has changed a bit. In the past, it was financial literacy, but right now, this is about digital literacy. I'm not going to give you the details. And on the other side, I think this is not the problem of the young generation, because young generation was already born into digital life. It's a bit problem for mid-aged generation or more experienced generation. I think they have to function their relearning mechanisms, and corporations, companies should also be working on this. And people who have their own jobs, I mean, self-employed people, their digital transformation should also be supported with the government, by the state. I'm talking about employees and employers as well, but I'm hopeful. I think we can also reach digital capabilities from everywhere. Thank you very much.
Çok kısa bir soru. Kısa olursa memnun oluruz cevaplar. Şimdi bu dijitalleşme anladık, iyi bir şey. Verimi arttırıyor. Yeni meslekler
Last question.
insanlar daha yetkin hale geliyor.
As digitalization increases,
Bir de insanın rahatsız eden bir yönü var. O da şu. Yani
digitalization increases maybe the irritation on the Brexit. We have also seen the same thing, and on the American
sosyal medyada
elections, we've also seen the same thing. Our social media footprint
yer tespit ediliyor ve bizi etkilemek için mesajlar.
also affects us.
Google'dan bir
We have receipts. We might receive some emails or messages or texts, and on Google, if we just look at something, for instance, we are again bombarded with certain texts. So our private life is under those threats. And it's not about my will. Even if I don't want it, those things are still on my screen. And sometimes people are a bit paranoid. For instance, they are just saying that I want to buy a refrigerator, and then when they look at the screen, they see some advertisements about refrigerators. There are such things as well. What do you think about that? Shouldn't we do something about this as well?
Teşekkür ederim. Valla ben çok olumlu bakıyorum. Her şeyden önce yani şeffaflığın çok arttığı, açık, şeffaf ve hesap verilebilir bir ortama geçtiğinde artık işlerin kapalı kapılar ardında değil, açık seçik yapılması.
Yes, I definitely believe that we have to be transparent. We have to be as transparent as possible. And what is the basis of politics? We know that people's need must be met. If with the digital implementations, if this political structure can't get along together,
İhtiyaç ve beklentileri doğru analiz edebiliyorsa bu mükemmel bir şey. Yani alanda
İşte beni yönlendirmeye çalışıyor.
ya da sizin zaten düşüncelerinize uygun hareket.
and also you might also think that this is maybe directing you, or else this is addressing your needs. If you have watched a refrigerator advertisement, yes, it is sending you the advertisements about refrigerator. It says that you're interested in refrigerators, and I'm sending you the alternatives. This is not something bad. Maybe we have to have this positive perspective.
Sizi niye yönlendiriyor? Diyelim ki biz uygulamada şunu yapıyorduk. Örneğin alışveriş sırasında çocuk bezi alan bir müşteriye kredi kartından anlıyorduk ki çocuğu var veya etrafında çocukla ilgili bir şey var. Dolayısıyla çocuğuyla ilgili
So, if a mother buys napkins or some diapers, for instance, for her children, some related alternatives are also sent to the mother. But what is a bad thing here? I mean, I'm always optimistic, and I have this positive perspective towards life.
tüketim eğilimlerinde farklı formatlayacağı çok ortada. Bugün bir alışveriş sitesine girdiğiniz zaman öyle yazılımlar var ki farklı ürünleri karşılaştırıp size en iyisini sunabiliyor.
Different products could be compared with one another, and you might have the alternatives. Yes. Yes, I got it.
Bir yemek ve ilişkiyle konuşmamız lazım. Çok teşekkür ederim. Şimdi Adriana mesela Adriana'ya sözü verelim.
Yes, let us give the floor to Adriana right now. The last words, your last words, Adriana, please.
Thank you. Can you please repeat the question just to be sure I understood it correctly?
You know, from our social media footprints, the artificial intelligence understands our political position and sending some message to us when we look for a refrigerator in Google, and there are lots of ads about that coming in Facebook and in other social media outlets. Is this a breach of privacy, or is that something normal? Do we have to do something to prevent this?
Yeah, very good question. We are always very open to share what we are eating at lunch and where we are with our friends and how we spend our time. But sometimes we are offended by receiving this type of publicity that maybe it's not required, let's say, at least by ourselves. So, of course, these systems also allow you to somehow cut out this kind of commercials. Yeah, if you don't want to have it. Sometimes you would need to pay for it because, as some colleagues of me say, if something is free, maybe then you are the product that is being sold there. So maybe you have to pay in order not to receive it. But yeah, it's a world where we need to understand what we want to see and where our privacy starts and where our privacy ends, and also to align our expectations. So we cannot pretend that we offer everything and we have everything for free sometimes. It's also a matter of what we expect and what we get.
Okay, thank you very much. Leyla Hanım, siz ne düşünüyorsunuz?
Miss Leila, what do you think about it? Yes, I think it's a very, very important issue in the next coming period. This is something that we are going to tackle upon, and we're going to learn about new regulations probably in all of the world. And many institutions and the regulations may orient it as well, but data ethics and AI ethics have to be taken into the agenda right now. And about data ethics, which it is important on what are you using the data for? Transparency is important here. And for what purpose are you using AI? And that transparency from over there is also very much important. If that doesn't create a value, you cannot use it. So such issues are going to be in our agenda, and many institutions have initiated their studies about this, of course, and we are one of the companies as such. We have started working about data ethics, and we're initiating a manifesto as well. Just like in any other company subjects, like in compliance and ethics, we will be having a roadmap, and we are going to move according to that roadmap. And in the world, and also in institutional governance, we are going to add data next to it as well. So be prepared. All right, thank you very much, Mr. Turan. What is your opinion?
Yalnız söyleyeyim,
But let me tell you,
reklamları değildi.
the commercials that were angering me was not actually the Vestel commercials. Of course, privacy is very much important. It's what people are giving importance to, but nowadays in this digital world, transparency is whether you like it or not, whether you want it or not, of course, transparency becomes very prominent. But indeed, maybe right now, technology is going to solve this issue by itself, perhaps, with new softwares or with new applications. The people can have maybe some opportunities to have options whether they want to see it or not. But you gave also the example of a refrigerator. We have developed a new a new application, a new refrigerator, actually. It is called actually the soothsayer, let's say. And it's doing the same thing.
Göndermeye çalışıyor. Adı da müneccim. Yani belki
Maybe
yani çok zor bir soru. Teknoloji
it's a very hard question. Technology does have actual opportunities, but on the other hand, it has actual downfalls as well. Maybe those who are making the regulation has to work on it. Yes, thank you very much, Mr. Alp. Let us wrap up with you. And yes, we are warned right now to complete the session. Yes, let me just wrap up. I do agree what is said so far, and on the other hand, if there is such a gap, indeed, since we're constantly talking about the young people, it is bringing up us together on universal rights, values. This is human rights and equality, etc. And the whole business world is going to change accordingly to this.
Yaşayacağımızı ümit ediyorum. Öte yandan da hani Facebook örneği verdim. Metaverse kurucusu olacak ve o platformun
the Metaverse founder, due to the judicial situation, that Metaverse wasn't really very much actually innocent in our eyes, in our minds. But I do agree with Ms. Leyla.
ilgili de code of conduct oluşacak.
And I believe that will be a code of conduct for that. And I believe that the companies are going to have rules and regulations about this or protocols. And since we are at the verge of accession point, it takes time to actually really start working.
Çok teşekkür ederim.
Okay, thank you very much.
Değerli izleyiciler, değerli
Distinguished participants. So we had a wonderful chat. We had a wonderful meeting, conversation for about 2 hours, and we were very well informed. Hopefully next year
farklı bir etkinliğinde buluşuruz.
we'll be coming together in another theme of the Aegean Economic Forum. Good evening.